All right, everybody. We are back with your 1 p.m. session here on day 3 at TMF Week 2023. It's truly been a pleasure thus far. Really excited about this upcoming session. Just give me some life in the chat or with some emojis when you can hear and see me. I know that there's a little bit of a delay, so just going to wait for that before hopping into this next introduction. In the meantime, as always, don't forget to drink your water. Super important to stay hydrated when we're staring at our screens all day. Just going to wait for that chat to start going off. Hello, I'm seeing some hellos. Thank you, Anne. Yeah, so welcome back, everyone, to TMF Week 2023. Hope you had a good networking / lunch break. Little bit of housekeeping before we hop into it. Yes. All of these sessions will be recorded. They will be available to you at the end of the day. Keep your eye on your inbox. All that good stuff. You will be able to rewatch them as many times as you want. You will also receive a certificate of attendance for the day. Sorry, for the entire conference, not for the day. So at the end of the week, you'll get something proving that you were here and that you attended, not for each session. We'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. Hopefully, if we don't, we can definitely take that up in the lounge. Not sure India is going to be able to make it to the lounge, but fingers crossed, and worst case scenario, a great opportunity to network, catch up with some like-minded individuals and some professionals in the industry. So really great time we've been having in the lounges. Definitely invite you all to show up there. Like I said, it's going to be 30 minutes of presentation until 1:30. We'll have the Q&A for 15 minutes, give or take, and then we'll have a little networking break in the lounges before the next session starts. So without further ado, India Gardner and how to make your TMF index work for you. India, take it away.
Thank you, Amit. All right. All right. Here we are. So as Amit said, today we're going to discuss how to make your TMF index work for you. But before we get into that, just a little bit of information about myself. I'm India Gardner, as you said, and I'm currently the Associate Director of TMF Operations at Inception Group, and I currently manage our TMF managers, our wonderful TMF managers, and I provide support on various other projects and oversight on different clients that we serve. I've been in this industry in clinical research for 10 years, with 7 of those dedicated primarily to TMF. So I've had the opportunity of getting multiple or various experiences in all things TMF, developing process improvements and TMF indices, TMF plans, and overseeing programs and things of that nature and training. So TMF has definitely offered me the opportunity to expand my experience and knowledge. And so that's me. And so we'll go ahead and we'll get into the agenda topics or session topics that I will discuss today on how to make your TMF index work for you. So we're going to go over some components of a good TMF index. There are many components of a good of making a good TMF index. However, I'm going to highlight just a few for the purposes and time's sake. We're going to talk about some artifacts, to use them or not use them. I know that's a conversation within the industry at times. We're going to discuss some TMF index training, the TMF index versus the completeness checks or quality checks, or however your organization defines those, and also making good use of your annual TMF index reviews. So again, we're going to discuss components of a good TMF index. And so The very first component that I want to discuss, I feel as maybe might be the most important one, and that is using a reliable template. So most of us know that the TMF reference model template is under the CDISC website now. It's under CDISC now. So it is available for you to download within their website. And I think the current version right now is 3.2.1. So I advise or suggest and recommend anyone who hasn't seen the new TMF reference model template to go ahead and download it and look at what's new, what's been updated. It is a very robust template and it's customizable, of course. You can use it at the organizational level if you are implementing a new TMF, or at the study level if you want to revamp your TMF index or make it more robust. And what I appreciate most about the TMF reference model is that the input and the development of this model is by experienced professionals who have actually lived and worked within our industry, and they understand what's required based off of their experiences. And so that is what makes it a really good template for me to use and for everyone to follow. So I would suggest going ahead and taking a look at that. But the first and foremost, the first component of having a good TMF index or making it work for you is definitely having a reliable template. Also, the next component that I want to discuss is making your TMF index understandable. You see here on my slide, it says make it make sense. You want to also make sure that it is understandable. And what I mean by that is the flow of your TMF index should be easy to understand, easy to read, easy for all contributors and stakeholders to use. And as I mentioned before in the first slide, the TMF index is customizable, but you want to find a good balance. Taking too much information away from the TMF index could cause gaps, but on the flip side of that, adding too much information could cause confusion. And so you want to make sure that you find a good balance of customizing the TMF index and actually entering the things that you really need in order to file in the TMF. Also, you want to make sure that your contributors are understanding the TMF index. We work in TMF all the time, so we, understand TMF. We understand, we talk the TMF language, but that's not the case for everyone, right? So we want to make sure that our contributors, our stakeholders understand the TMF, and even the ones that are considered SMEs and will be helping develop the TMF index maybe for a study or the organization. We want to make sure they understand it. We want to make sure that they understand the requirements or what's required from them. Also, we want to achieve the highest level of accuracy. And I say accuracy because we want to kind of shift gears from thinking that our TMF index has to be perfect. Perfection in creating a TMF index is nearly impossible. It depends on, where your study is at a certain point. So perfection versus accuracy, we want to make sure that it's accurate by entering all of the information that you know at that point versus you thinking that it has to be 100% complete at the initial development stage. So we want to strive for accuracy versus perfection. Also, we want to avoid indecisiveness. And what I mean by this is that there are certain artifacts within the TMF index where multiple documents can be filed. But as an organization or as a study team, it's very important for you to have that conversation and actually address it at the point of development of where you want this document to go. What is the perfect or desired artifact that this document belongs, and any other document that may fall into that category. You can make that decision then, but also know that the TMF index is customizable and you can update it at any time if need be. But if you want to reanalyze this at your annual reviews, then you can change it then and make that decision then, or change that decision then. But we want to make sure that we create the most robust TMF index that we possibly can, and kind of avoid making or not making decisions because we're not clear on what we want to do, as an organization or a study team. We also want to avoid Unnecessary content, columns, and details. Like I said, the TMF reference model template is a good template to follow. We want to make sure that if we are adding columns or additional columns, that it is something that is understandable across the board and not just for a specific group or a specific document, whatever that may be. So as you see, I have a screenshot here of a TMF index that I have used previously, and it has a column for CRO comments and a column for unblinded guidance. And so while this is great for a study, just to give some context behind it, there were some fields that were empty. So that could lead to some confusion, that could lead to some gaps. So we want to make sure that we're not adding too much detail that could confuse the end user or the contributor. And with that, we also want to decide is this additional detail that I'm adding in the TMF index, can that be added to another guidance document? Or could it be, maybe does it need to be a process? So maybe actually having that conversation as a team versus adding that information to the TMF index and kind of making it a bit overwhelming. The next component is making sure your TMF index is complete. And again, when I say complete, I don't mean perfection or having all the information at one time. But when I say complete, I mean having what you know in the index at that time already in the index, meaning that everyone on the study team has collaborated together and everything that you know about that study or everything that you know about what you need as an organization has been incorporated at that time. And we kind of have to shift gears a bit because sometimes complete does mean going beyond what documents are expected and going beyond what documents are required for the study. There are a lot of other components of the TMF index that we should consider, such as translations. Or if you have a translation plan, you can definitely highlight that there. Or if your translation plan is not accessible to all team members, I would highly suggest maybe putting that within the TMF plans of what artifacts are expected to have translations. Any other information such as collection frequency for those documents that are collected throughout the study or at the end of the study, unblinded information, accurate document owners. We want to make sure that we're actually reviewing this part of the TMF index as well, because depending on how your organization is structured or how your study is structured, that might not be the same across the board. So we want to make sure that that area is accurate, and also adding additional information or additional filing guidance. That is sometimes helpful. It does require a little bit more leg room and a little bit more leg work and a little bit more elbow grease to kind of put that filing guidance within the TMF index. And we also want to make sure that that guidance is not contradicting what we already know or any other processes that you currently have implemented in your system. Or your organization. So another component to complete is participation. So you have to have participation in order to have a complete TMF index. And that means participation from all departments, from all stakeholders, all contributors. And it's very important to highlight that all SMEs do need to be a part of making the TMF index complete. And so we need buy-in from biostats. We need buy-in from data management in order to have the highest level of accuracy. Without that, there is a risk of maybe a prolonged completeness review because you don't have all the information you need. And we'll kind of, touch on that later in the presentation. Misfiling or maybe some unclear filing guidance, which could essentially lead to some non-compliance. The last component that I'll discuss, and also, again, there could be a lot of other components to making a good TMF index and making it work for you. And if you want to put some of those in the chat, I definitely welcome you to do that. But the next one we'll talk about is a reflection of the TMF. And so I'm pretty sure everyone has heard that your TMF index should reflect your TMF and vice versa. That is absolutely true. It should, but I want us to kind of shift our focus on making them more like siblings or best friends rather than identical twins. Again, we're striving for accuracy, not perfection. So there are going to be some situations where your TMF index and your TMF are going to be relatable rather than identical, and that is okay. As long as we know the story and we can tell the story of the TMF, and then we're going to address some of those maybe discrepancies that we find later on and update those, that's fine. You know, it's a customizable TMF index, and we are, you know, as we're running the study or as we're growing as an organization, there's going to be changes, and that's okay. So we need to remember that the TMF index is basically a roadmap, a navigation tool. It is a determinant, it's just one determinant of if your TMF is complete or not, but it's also going to help you get to that place of having a TMF or a complete TMF. All right. So next, we're going to shift gears and discuss sub-artifacts. Do we use them or do we not use them? But before we get into that, I do have one poll that I would like everyone to participate in. And how many sub-artifacts are you using currently in your organization or have implemented in your TMF system? I know that, you know, some organizations may use a lot of sub-artifacts, some may use minimal artifacts, and just kind of curious, you know, kind of pressure test the session to see kind of what you currently use. Let's see. Wow. So far, everyone is between 0 to 20. And that's changing. Oh, wow. Okay. So most of everyone in this session is between 0 to 20. That's where the majority lies. I'm really happy to see that option D, too many to track, is very less. I'm glad to see that. I do see some 50 to 100. I do see that there as well. So wow, so there's a definitely a variety of responses, but for the most part, mostly everyone is between 0 to 20. All right. So sub-artifacts, what are they? What are they even? What is the purpose of them? So basically it's to better help you navigate or drill down to a specific document, maybe a document that is under one artifact. Of course, there are several documents that can be filed in one artifact, which makes it a sub-artifact. And so this is kind of what we use them for. Within my experience, I'll say, and I know that some people may not have the same opinion, but I do think it is okay to use sub-artifacts. I say use them. It's important to reference them in your TMF index, though. It is very important to give stakeholders or contributors the opportunity to see those non-obvious documents that may be filed under an artifact that might not be the name of the document they're trying to file. So I definitely do believe that artifacts are okay to use. But what I do recommend is that when we are putting sub-artifacts in the TMF index, we need to put them all under the same artifact. I've had experiences where it's done a little bit, differently, where each sub-artifact has its own line or own row, but that can be overwhelming. As we know, the TMF index is already a lengthy document, and so we want to make it less intimidating to those who have to use it and have to file in the TMF. But I do say that it is okay to use sub-artifacts. However, there is a flip side to sub-artifacts as well. Too many sub-artifacts can be overwhelming. Every artifact doesn't need 3 to 4 or 5 or 6 sub-artifacts. I think it's important to narrow down what you really need and what you really want and what's required for your study to prevent them from, being overwhelming, to prevent the TMF index from being overwhelming. Where I've seen sub-artifacts kind of get a little bit overwhelming is when they're implemented within whatever TMS system you're using, whatever EDMS you're using, and you have a lot of options for a document owner to drill down, and it can get overwhelming and confusing and cause a little bit of misfiling too. if they are not using the proper sub-artifacts. So listing them within the TMF index will pose less of a risk of, misfilings versus having them in the TMF system. So I suggest the main place for the sub-artifacts to live, which would be in the TMF index. Okay. So TMF index training, this is more of a passion of mine. I love training. I love training on anything TMF, but specifically for the TMF index. But before we get into this, I do have another poll that I would like for you all to participate in. How are you currently training your stakeholders on the TMF index? I've seen this done various ways. It could be self-paced, with a quiz, or self-paced with an acknowledgement of understanding, instructor-led. Sometimes training may not be required. Just curious to know kind of what your experience are. Okay. So I'm seeing a lot of instructor-led training. That's been the highest. Okay. Responses are still coming in, but for the most part, instructor-led trainings are taking the cake. All right. Awesome. So going beyond the usual, as you all probably have seen, sometimes the TMF index training is a self-paced training with a quiz, or a self-paced training with just acknowledging that you've read it. But what I have seen kind of shift within our industry, and I'm so glad to see it, is that the trainings for the TMF index are now becoming more instructor-led. Like I said before, the TMF index is a very lengthy document. It can be somewhat overwhelming at times, and you want to make sure that those who are using it understand it, and understand what their contribution to the TMF per the TMF index is. And so in my personal experience, I've found that instructor-led training is basically what helps more, increase compliance within filing in the TMF, increase, questions from stakeholders, and making them feel more comfortable with the TMF as well. If you haven't tried instructor-led training for the TMF index, I would highly suggest it. Understanding that time is of the essence, and we all kind of don't have it, right? So finding a good time to train your team on the TMF index, where they can have that personable training, where they can ask questions and understand it at that moment, is great. I've had instructor-led TMF index trainings where we did it on the organizational level, or you can do it on the department level. Everyone's not going to need to know everything about the TMF, but if you can, or if you have the time or availability, then you can maybe train biostats on what their responsibilities in the TMF index is, and so on and so forth, or any other department. And so I've found that does create more compliance within the TMF. And it also changes the culture as well. It increases the excitement of those who want to work in the TMF, because now they get it. They understand what it requires, or what their involvement requires as far as filing and guidance. And they feel a part of the team, and they feel like they've contributed. So it's creating a much more positive culture around TMF. All right. So TMF index versus the completeness check. So your completeness reviews, maybe the first, maybe the second, depending on where your study is, of the TMF QC. This will be an indicator of how accurate your TMF index is. For example, if you are looking in your TMF and you see that possibly there's some documents filed in a section that should be in that section, but in your TMF index, it says that it's not required. So this is how you're going to know what you need to tweak in your TMF index in order to make it as accurate as your TMF, or vice versa. then it will also help you fill in some of those gaps in the beginning that you may not were aware of in the beginning, or didn't have all of the information that you need. But having that completeness check and using your TMF index will help fill in some of those gaps from the initial development. And I can't stress enough that the TMF index should be the aid to your completeness check or your completeness review or quality review. Oftentimes, we are looking in the TMF at what is there doing a completeness review versus what should be there and what is in there. So we should be using our TMF index as an aid. Sometimes it's not used in that way because it could be hard to follow. It could be not having all the information, or it could not be customized per the study. It could be just a template. And this is why I encourage all collaboration, all stakeholders, and a really good deep dive into the TMF and what is required, so that when you get to this point, your TMF index is more of a tool and more of an aid rather than something that is scary to look at or a little bit overwhelming. And then it can kind of help speed up the process of your completeness review as well. So we want to make sure that we're not just using a template for the TMF index, and that we are truly customizing it to what it is that we need and how it's supposed to reflect the TMF. So let's take a different outlook. So what I like to do before any type of completeness review, before any type of completeness check, before I look within the TMF, I always go back to the TMF index and I familiarize myself with what was in the TMF index first. I need to understand what's required. I need to understand who is responsible for specific documents. I need to be clear on what those remediations are going to be based on the TMF index and based on what's in the TMF. Absolutely, when you're doing your completeness reviews, any discrepancy that you find within the TMF that doesn't relate to the TMF index in a major way and vice versa is absolutely a remediation and is a finding of your completeness review, and should be documented because it is an action that we need to follow up on in order to make that update. So again, if it's not in the TMF or if it's not in the TMF index and you find that discrepancy, that's something that we need to know as, a finding or a remediation that the internal team can take back and then look at their TMF index and then make that change. All right. So taking advantage of your annual reviews. And before we get into this one, I have one last poll that I would like for everyone to participate in. And so during your annual reviews, who is involved in that TMF index review? Is it everyone? Is it everyone a part of the study team, or everyone or an SME a part of each function within your organization? Is it just the TMF resource and the project lead? Is it, the TMF resource and the clinical lead, or is it just the TMF resource only? I've seen all of these aspects, but I'm just curious to see what everyone else's experience is. Okay. Seeing mostly all stakeholders. We have some TMF resource and PL, TMF resource and clinical lead, and some responses for just the TMF resource. So definitely experience varies in this question. Okay. All right. Mostly all stakeholders, which I'm very relieved to see, and it makes me happy to see that because collaboration is key. We want to make sure that we are investing time in our TMF index reviews, and that includes all stakeholders. Everyone should be involved in the TMF index because all aspects of the study are being assessed as well. We need an SME for each zone. We don't know, we may have experience in certain areas or all areas, but for that particular zone, we do need an SME input. And as TMF resources or TMF ops resources, we are the facilitators, we're the advisors, we're the leaders in this process of reviewing the TMF index. So we are there with expertise of what's required to make the TMF index successful. We don't know or don't have all of the information, although we may have some type of idea, but it is best that we include all SMEs and all stakeholders within the annual reviews. Everyone has had a chance to look at the TMF. Everyone has had a chance to look in at the TMF index for an extended period of time with the study. So everyone should have equal buy-in input on what needs to be updated and how we can best make the TMF index work for us and work for the study. Saving time. Now, one thing that I know for sure is that we don't have a lot of time sometimes. Sometimes our calendars are filled with meetings, and the last thing we want to do is add a couple more, right? So I think having, opportune time to review the TMF index is pivotal. It doesn't have to be an extra meeting. It could be within your TMF completeness reviews. It doesn't have to be the first one, because I know the frequency of some completeness reviews may be quarterly or biannually or whatever the case may be. So maybe that last completeness review of the year is also dedicated to look at the TMF, but also look at the TMF index at the same time and make those updates there. And then it helps the process of implementation go a little bit faster if you're doing it at the same time. It saves that time, and it saves and increases the time for implementation as well. And so if time is not on your side and, it's something that, you don't really have a lot of time to review the TMF index separately, I do suggest, and I have experienced reviewing the TMF index while we are doing the completeness reviews, making those updates there. And so it is definitely a time saver. Implementation. So during our annual reviews, I always say revert back to the beginning. Everyone needs to be updated to understand the new updates to the TMF index. And this can be instructor-led as well. But instead of, maybe not having a broader training on the TMF index, let's just talk about what the updates are. Let's just have a training on what that update or what those updates to the TMF index are. And so this can be done during study team meetings or, one-on-one sessions, or you can just openly have an available slot for people to just come and ask questions about the TMF index update. I advise taking that same approach that we discussed about TMF index training in the beginning, which is instructor-led training. And I know a lot of you all have had that experience as well. So I think keeping this up is definitely going to increase everyone's knowledge of what's in the TMF index and what was updated, and allow those to be more susceptible to using it. And the compliance within the TMF in the TMF would increase. And also, everyone can use a refresher, even me being in TMF for 7 years, and those who actually work in TMF every single day, everyone can use a refresher. Some of us don't have the TMF index memorized, so it's going to take some time for us to understand kind of what the updates are. So everyone can really benefit from a refresher. So when you're doing your annual reviews, just keep that in mind, that we need to be training or continuously training our team on what the changes are so that we can have that accurate TMF. Okay, so I've discussed a lot, but let's recap everything that I've discussed within this session. So we want to make our TMF index work for us. And to do this, we have to ensure that we have a good template, a good TMF template. We discussed the TMF reference model under CDISC now, and it's downloadable. You can download it from their website. We need to make sure we have a reliable template. And we also need to make sure that we have some good components in making a good TMF index. We want to make sure that our TMF index is understandable. We want to make sure that it's complete. We want to make sure that it's reflective, keeping in mind that the TMF index and the TMF are more like siblings versus identical twins. We want to make sure that it's accurate versus perfection. And we want to make sure that we're training our team, having a holistic training that is beneficial for all contributors and stakeholders that are using the TMF index. And collaboration is key. And we want to make sure that we are including our contributors and our stakeholders within the TMF index reviews, as they are the SMEs for certain aspects of the TMF. So we want to make sure that we get their input in order to make the TMF index as complete as we possibly can. We also want to avoid indecisiveness and unnecessary information or details or comments within the TMF index, and kind of revisit or have a conversation of whether or not it belongs here, or belongs in the TMF index, or it belongs in another maybe guidance document or process. We want to use reasonable sub-artifacts. We want to make sure that they are not overwhelming. We want to make sure that they are serving a purpose and actually benefiting those who are actually in need of those sub-artifacts. And lastly, we want to take advantage of our annual reviews by incorporating them maybe into our completeness reviews, setting time aside for these annual reviews, or in training as well, and making sure that we revisit the fact that even after our annual review, when we make sure and we make those updates to the TMF index, that we are actually doing maybe instructor-led training, or ensuring that all contributors and stakeholders have what they need and understand the TMF index in order for them to be able to operate within the TMF. And so with all of these aspects, it will help aid a more complete TMF index. So further along in the study, instead of you always looking in the TMF and wondering, is it complete or is it correct? Now your TMF index is working for you. So I hope that everyone has gained some insight on maybe how to make your TMF index work for you, and it becomes more of a tool, more of an aid to you during the process of your study or filing in your TMF. And I do appreciate the time that you all have given me today, and I will open it up for any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, India. What a fantastic presentation. This really is the best virtual TMF summit, whatever you want to call it, week conference in the universe. We've got a question with some upvotes. So maybe we can start with that one. It's from Ron Prince. And the question is, how do you handle / manage artifacts that are owned by more than one departmental function with
Amit, I'm sorry, the volume is a little bit off. I don't know if you could turn it off and on.
How's that?
Still hearing some back end noise.
Would you like to manage the Q&A, Kim?
I'm hearing it myself. I don't know if you could just leave and come back, and we'll see if that helps.
And then I do see the question. So while am I having feedback too, Kim?
No, you're not having feedback.
Okay.
Is anyone? I'm sorry. Is anyone hearing feedback when we are talking? Yeah, they're hearing an echo.
Slightly.
Okay, perfect. I'll just run this.
So I will go ahead and answer the question regarding how do you handle or manage the artifacts that are owned by multiple departments or functions within the TMF index. And so as a TMF resource, this is your opportunity to be the facilitator and be the leader with collaborating with both functional SMEs. And that may involve having a meeting or setting some time aside to discuss, the specifics of the artifact and what the responsibilities for each department is going to be. We have to kind of shift gears a little bit. I know sometimes in the past we've worked on the TMF index through emails or just sending it to the next person to review. But sometimes some artifacts, such as the ones where they're owned by multiple departments or functions, does require a little bit more conversation. So with that, I do advise having conversations with both SMEs to kind of determine what the requirements for that specific artifact is for each department, and actually defining that within the TMF index.
Okay, excellent. I'm just going to take this off. I don't know if you're hearing any echo on me.
I am, but I can still hear you though. It's okay.
Perfect. Having a little bit of difficulty. Media life event. I don't know if you're able to answer this question yet, because we're getting a lot of feedback from the end. And I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
So this one with Miyuki.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's the best frequency of updating TMF index or using artifacts?
So what is the best frequency of updating TMF index or adding artifact placeholders or ongoing ad hoc basis? Well, I would suggest maybe we really shouldn't have too many updates to the index, frequently throughout the study. But in the event that you do, I think it might be best to kind of analyze what those frequent changes are and maybe go back and look at your TMF index to see if you've included everything initially. So for that, I would suggest keeping it to your annual reviews. But of course, if there's pertinent information during the study that cannot wait, then it is okay to go ahead and update it then. I would advise against continuing updating your TMF index frequently and having frequent updates. But I would say that your annual reviews, or even sometimes biannually, if you have a study that is running very quickly, or that requires that much review. So I would say annual. Of course, we're supposed to review the TMF index annually anyway. But if you feel that there's a need to pay more attention to the TMF index based on your study, then biannually would be a good idea as well.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you again.
Mm-hmm.
Have another question from Ronia, and she says, how do you handle or manage artifacts owned by more than one department function within the TMF index?
I think I did. I think that was the first question.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good.
I think there's one from where she says there are some sections where you can modify and we can't modify. Examples can be modified.
So yes, so I do feel that sections can be modified based on the configuration of your TMF, what's there, and what your TMF can how your TMF system is configured, and the specifics for your study. And I guess I would need to understand what type of modifications you want to make to an artifact, because as we know, the way the system is, or the way that your TMF system is configured, you may not be able to change that particular artifact, but you can, in the TMF index, document additional guidance or additional information, and that is the place to do that within the TMF index. So if you don't need artifacts, if artifacts are not required for your study, within the TMF index, we all know that we can put not required within the TMF index, and that kind of eliminates that requirement for us if it's not in our system. So I think actually using the TMF index and using the components of the TMF index to add additional information, update it as much as we possibly can, will help with some of those modifications that we see maybe on a more study-specific basis.
Great. I think I'm going to have to here. I know these problems are around. Take the time to answer some of them. Maybe not right after. We can definitely schedule something for afterwards, where you can reach out to the speakers that are here. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly, just so that we can move that along. 2 seconds. And great presentation, and there was a lot of great questions that were coming out from that, and we appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Perfect. So now I just want to remind everyone that we have our last session of the day that's coming up at the top of the hour at 2 p.m. And it is with Jamie O'Keefe, and it's accelerating the implementation of eTMF systems with risk-based validation. And like I said, I want to thank India for taking the time to present today. Like I said, there was a lot of good engagement, a lot of great insights that we're able to take away from that. And we will definitely reach out to you guys to answer your questions further.
Yes, absolutely.
And so now it's time to network. So we're going to do a networking break. You guys can head over to the lounge area and just connect with people. That's what TMF Week is all about. It's about connection. It's about community. It's about expanding our knowledge. So please head over to the lounge or check out Montrum's booth to do that as well. Meet with people, chill, and have a good time. That's what it's all about. And just to let you know, we have a survey contest coming out, and we would love to get some feedback from you. And everyone that gives a feedback has a chance to win these awesome TMF Converse shoes. I just look at them, they'll look great on your feet. Please go and give some feedback just by clicking and entering our survey contest. So with that, I will just like to say thank you everyone for joining us at TMF for our 3rd session at TMF Week. India, thank you again for a great presentation, and we'll see you guys at the next session. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.